Hello again, everyone. Mr. Lewis here, ready to go through section 6.4 of the notes in AP HuG today as we continue with political geography. And we only have two sections left. Today's section focuses on political power and territoriality. So let's dive into it. All right, so territoriality is all about who has control over a particular area. And when we talk about political power, we're talking about control in the sense of the laws that govern the people in an area, the land, and the resources that are in that land. So this is all expressed geographically, right? Through our borders. But within those borders, there are two different types of states, unitary and federal. A unitary state is one in which the power is all focused in a central government. We see this in communism, monarchies. So North Korea is a good example of a unitary state. China is another one. Federal states, on the other hand, are those in which power is divided between local and central government. So the United States is an example of a federal state because within the United States, we have different states and territories that can make their own laws. Now, as we look around the world, there are more unitary states overall, but the federal states are much larger. Canada, United States, Brazil, Russia, Australia, India. And this makes sense because if you have more territory to govern, wouldn't it be easier to distribute a lot of that political power, a lot of that political say to local or provincial governments? I think it would make sense. So that's probably why we see that. Now, China is the exception because they are a communist state, so they would fall under that unitary state category. We also see this expressed through borders within the country itself. In Canada, a federal state, we have different boundaries that protect the interest or the sovereignty, some might say, of different provinces and territories within Canada. In Ukraine, on the other hand, that political power is centralized. They're a unitary state, so we wouldn't see these types of political boundaries in the Ukraine. We also see other international forms of political power. Neocolonialism is one of those examples. You saw this in the video about China and their investments in African nations and really other parts of the world as well, where they were financing infrastructure development and also gifting many of these nations soccer stadiums. This is neocolonialism because they're using economic power to potentially influence their decision-making on an international geopolitical level, right? They're voting in the United Nations General Assembly, for example, as was mentioned in the video. The old form of colonialism involved direct military control. Neocolonialism does not. It's about economic influence. Shatterbelt regions are another example of a way in which we see political power expressed. So in some cases, we have two major political powers, two different states that are trying to express or defend their political beliefs. And they do so through what we call a proxy war, where a Shatterbelt region ends up becoming the battlefield, so to speak. Korea is an example of this. We have the Korean Peninsula and the Korean people divided between two different states, North and South Korea. And you can see in 1950, this was at the 38th parallel. That would be a geometric boundary, right? Today, we have this subsequent boundary that is there as a result of the war that took place between North Korea and South Korea. But another Shatterbelt region would be Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia had many different interests internally, and it shattered as a result, and through many different civil wars, became all of the different countries we find in former Yugoslavia today. Finally, a choke point is a pass, a valley, a strait through the seas that can be used strategically. Now, historically, we saw this used at the Battle of Thermopylae, where the Spartans lured the Persian army into a pass where, although the Spartans were really outnumbered, they could fight to the very end, almost equally with this much larger Persian army because they were using this pass strategically. And so today, what's almost more important, arguably, are these straits. And you might wonder, well, why are these so important? Why do you hear so much about the Panama Canal or the Suez Canal? Or, as you'll hear today, a little bit about the Strait of Malacca. The reason is they're very economically important. We have a lot of the world's trade flowing through these different straits every single day. And there's a lot of economic interest in them. So if you are a state or a country that has control over one of these passes, one of these straits along the high seas, then you have some geopolitical power, right? You have some say when it comes to international relations. And so these different straits are very economically valuable. You can see how much oil transports through here in terms of how wide this blue line is, right? So the wider it is, the more oil goes through there, and oil is valuable. It's a huge industry. So they're very economically strategic and important. And as you think about what you saw in the video with China's One Belt, One Road project, which is trying to connect all these different countries around Asia and Africa and Europe through highway systems, railroad systems, and a maritime port system, right? Trade along the high seas, it becomes that much more important. And as China expands their geopolitical influence in this region, we also have to think about the U.S. response to that. And you can see the U.S. already has bases in this region of the world, over here in Guam, right? Here in Japan, in Okinawa, in South Korea. And so this region of the world has already drawn a lot of interest from both the United States and, of course, China, as we discussed, so much so that here in the South China Sea, just south of China, China has actually built islands. They've constructed small, kind of rudimentary pieces of land by packing all of this dirt, this earth, on top of these shallow, water-covered pieces of land that were already there. And by doing so, they've claimed these territories and can put, say, military or industrial operations there. So this part of the world is becoming increasingly important, and a lot of it is because of that trade. All right, that's it for section 6.4. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you tomorrow to wrap up Unit 6. Thanks, everyone. See ya.